I have known Amira Sonbol, my friend and colleague, for almost 2 decades. Nearly half of it was while in Doha, where I knew her better. Our contact started with the Gulf Women Book Project in 2005. A few years passed by, and here I was in Doha teaching at the Department of International Affairs that she established at Qatar University as part of the collaboration between Georgetown and Qatar University. Time went by, filled with joy and work, many of which were joint projects and programs, panels and conferences, books and articles. Amira was always full of innovative thoughts and life. In addition to the social life we had with friends, she was my family in Doha and the auntie to my children. Part of this family, a group were her pets, dogs and cats, whom she took care of, like her child Abdul, who inherited this love and care for animals from her mother and father. If I were to choose from where to start my memories of Amira, it would be her modesty. A renowned scholar in women's history, Islamic studies, Ottoman period in Egypt, Palestine, Levant, contemporary Gulf, and groundbreaking research on many levels and areas, she was still a modest, humble, down-to-earth, loving, caring, and selfless person. She was more interested in the others, their ideas, sayings, concerns, and welfare than hers. She was enthusiastic about so many things, encouraging others to do their best, and pushing women and men, students and colleagues to become better researchers and persons. Part of our mutual projects were the Women's Studies Circle in Doha, the project of Culture House, Musawa, the movement for equality in the Muslim family, Women and Memory Forum in Egypt. Through them, we shared many ideas of empowering Muslim women from inside Islam in writing, research, and academia. She took great pride in editing Gulf Women Book for its innovative and pioneering ideas and approaches. At Qatar University, she trusted me with major courses on gender and women's studies, including women in Islam, that became my signature and at the university. After I left Qatar back to Riyadh, we kept in touch by email, and then we moved to Zoom, where we set a time that was regular until she disappeared. Abla, you had a mother to be proud of. رحمك الله يا أميرة وجزاك الله خيرا عن كل كبد رطب أسقيتها من علمك وعملك وخيرك آمين.
Okay, you can hear me, right? Okay, good evening, everyone. I think I'm honored to be moderating the last panel. I think we've heard from a lot of important people, but I think this is the most important group today. These are her students. And like, you know, Dean Safwan, like I feel like I'm also envious of you because I've only been here 2.5 years. I only met Amira remotely when we had virtual conversations. And I remember my first interaction with her was during my job talk, which happened over Zoom. Unfortunately, was in the middle of COVID. And the question she asked me, and I can never forget, like I can even feel her energy from the screen. And she was like, so what do you think about the African passport? And I was like, thank God. So I had an opportunity to rant about the African passport. And then after that, I had a meeting with her, and she made out time to talk to me also virtually because she couldn't come into the office. And we had what I usually call the typical African auntie conversation. And if you know what an African auntie is like, you know what a conversation is like. So yeah, I'd like to welcome all of you to this panel. I'll just go in this order. I have Zarqa Parvez from Georgetown University. And here I have Sadaf, Jaffer, from Princeton University. And then I have Fatima Hubail with us, Georgetown University. And Abdul Rahman Chamseddin with us here as well from Georgetown University. And you guys interacted with her as students. She was also a mentor to you. So my first question would actually be to know, when was the first time you met Amira, and what was your first impression? So we can go in this order as well.
Okay, so glad to be sharing this panel with my colleagues. Sadaf, who I've heard so much of her from Professor Sonbol. She used her as an example to tell me why I should finish my PhD and stop writing on social media. I just want to start first of all by thanking Dean Masri for this initiative, Professor Sonbol, who always reminds me, Rugaya Abu Sharaf, and she reminds me of her, and to you, Lynda, and everyone else who worked so hard to bring this together. I met Professor Amira Sonbol for the first time in 2009 when I was a first-year student here at Georgetown. I took my Middle East History 1 class with her, and she was so famous at that time, and it was a very small campus. We were in the old building. We were a class of 30, and she was the face of Georgetown. I heard so much about her. And I was excited to be in her class. I was intimidated by her a little bit, but I think my first impression of her was that she was so warm, so welcoming, and everything that was said about her, that she saw people's talent. She certainly told me in the very first meeting, I know you're going to do your PhD. I know you're going to continue this work. I want to just leave with this small story that I think inspired a lot in me, was that during that class that I took with her, we were divided into 2 groups. So one group was with her Professor Sonbol, and the other one was with her TA, and I was with her TA and my group. And so during my presentation, I didn't know that she was going to be making a surprise visit to our class, and I was presenting on Ibn Khaldun, al-Muqaddimah, which she introduced us to. And that's another great thing about her, is that her syllabus was so diverse, something I implement in my own teaching now. And so she made a surprise visit to my class. I felt so pressured. What do I do now? But after that presentation, she went back and wrote to me in a personal email. She said, "You did a great job. I'm so proud of you." And I think that made all the difference to me. It made me, that day it sparked something in me. And I think that's what a great teacher does, that she makes it personal. And I always remember that, and how she always inspired me to go beyond the dominant, and made me believe that I could do something. I'll leave it to that. We can hear you.
Okay. So I first met Professor Sonbol my freshman year of college at Georgetown, 2001, Georgetown in DC, and I guess I just wanted to be exactly like her. And she gave me that confidence. She was the first person to ever suggest that I pursue a PhD. My family, no one has a PhD. I knew nothing about it, and I was concerned about how would I fund this? And she kind of explained to me that you can get funded for graduate study. And I was always in her office, every office hour. She was so generous with her time. That's been a theme, I think, throughout the day. And that's an inspiration for me in my teaching, in my research, and just in being a good human being. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Hi everyone, and thank you for having me here. So I have a funny story about how I met Professor Sonbol. So in 2011, when I first joined the program, I noticed that there were a lot of students taking the Middle East history classes, and it was always with Professor Sonbol at the time. And they'd be walking around with this huge list of books and all that, and I was always so scared and intimidated. I would see her walking down the halls, and I'm like, okay, it's Professor Sonbol, she's coming by, because it seems like it was a very demanding course. But the thing is, what I was also witnessing at the same time is that when you did take Professor Sonbol's class, you are part of the in-group. You have a legacy in this university. So I remember that throughout the years, I would walk into class and I would find her, the stepping stool that said Sonbol on it, and me being short, I would go and stand on it and try to feel like I have a presence in life and I have some kind of validation. And it only took me 3 years to build the courage to go and tell her, to use Brinkley Messick's the calligraphic state as an excuse to go and talk to Professor Sonbol. That's how scared I was. It wasn't because of anything, it's because she was so great. It was the fact that when people spoke about her, they spoke about someone who is the authority when it comes to like telling you your worth and value in life, and that's what she was in my life. So in 2014, that's when as I again built the courage, and since then she became a mom to me. And it's not just her being a mother, it's not just her being a mentor. She believed in me in ways that I never believed in myself. In a time where I was experiencing forms of abuse and violence, she would tell me and reassure me about my place in the world, and would tell me not to give up on myself. And that's primarily how I remember Professor Sonbol. She's Mama Sonbol to me. I'll leave it at that before I continue with my experiences. Thank you.
So before arriving in Qatar, I heard a lot about her in DC from my colleagues that, she's a very well-known historian. And when I arrived here, I was teaching, and I was supposed to be working on my dissertation. So she kept on asking me, what are you working on, etc. And then I started to avoid her, although my office was at the same floor as hers. And then one day she called me into her office and she said, like you said, "Ana zay mama, I'm like your mother, and Abdul Rahman, you have to finish, and I'm going to supervise your work." So of course I didn't have a chance not to do that, and I worked with her for the following 3 years until I finished.
Yeah, so we've gotten to talk about like your first impression, and then eventually she became your teacher, your mentor. So what was she like as a teacher, and how has that, you're all academics now, how has that impacted your academic journey?
I don't know where to be. When you told me that you're going to be asking us these questions, I started writing down so much, and I don't know where to begin with, but I will say that she not only inspired my work as undergraduate, but even after that, throughout my postgraduate journey, even my work life. One thing I want to talk about is, I know the first panels spoke about her contributions to Georgetown and to Qatar University, but I think what was not mentioned was that she was so instrumental in Hamad bin Khalifa's University's College of Humanities and Social Sciences, which was my first job, and I was part of the founding dean's team to put the college together. And there we were in the process of designing new master programs, and we had MA in Women's Society and Development, the only one of its kind in the region, to which Professor Amira Sonbol contributed a great deal. She was on the committee with me and others in designing that program, and it was famous that she was very busy, but she would still make time to come and help us put that program together, which I think Fatima is a graduate of that program. She wrote a really award-winning thesis for that program. So me being in that committee was inspired by her. Me doing that work was inspired by her. That was my first job before I started my PhD. But even like I said, Lynda, when we've spoken about this in personal capacity, is that she's also told me the very first time I went to her office discussing a research paper with her, we almost got into a heated discussion because I used to score always A's in her papers. But this one final paper, I was writing about marriage in Islam, and I wrote about the Sunni marriage, that's the sect I belong to, and she said, well, why don't you write about the Shia marriage? Why don't you write about Mut'a marriage? And I said, I was set in my ways, was not convinced. She said, well, okay, then you can go and repeat everything you already know, as you want. And not I was a bit scared, am I going to get a fail on this assignment? But ultimately I learned, and I did write a paper on muta marriage and I got an A, but I learned so much. She pushed me to unlearn and to research what I am uncomfortable in researching. I don't want to take a long time, but she also inspired my methodology in my own PhD. She was my unofficial supervisor for my PhD. In fact, my acknowledgement, my entire PhD was dedicated to her. That's what I said to her in my last meeting in December, last December, before she went to Egypt. And she said, you made my day. My methodology, everybody already spoke about her methodology. I don't think I need to go into details, but like telling stories, lived realities, archival work. I think somebody already spoke about her book on Gulf Women, and that's one of her many brilliant works. But Gulf Women is a book that I assign in my own classes that I teach her at Georgetown and at Northwestern. But it also inspired my own methodology. We tried to do, me and other researchers in the field, archival work, which was very difficult to do in the Gulf. But she made us do that. She inspired us to do that, and she showed us that it was possible. And beyond that, the last thing, I think I was also trained by her as a teacher. I was the first TA, before the TA program was established here at Georgetown in 2015. Right after I finished my master's, she generously took me in, and I was trained by her for 2 years. I'm so proud of that. Just in the classroom, watching her teach, and how she treats her students as her equals. They were not her students, they were her colleagues, you know. And my teaching methodology, my research methodology was inspired by her in great ways that I don't think I can summarize, but I'll leave it to that. Thank you.
So I would say that certainly my life would be completely different. I had not met Professor Sonbol. As you heard, she was the first to even recommend pursuing a PhD, which was an opportunity, an option that had never crossed my mind. And I took several courses with her, including an independent study that she offered on Arab philosophers and intellectuals. And I served as a research assistant. She was my undergraduate advisor at Georgetown. And I think, you know, somewhat inspired by her, I studied abroad in Egypt my junior year at the American University in Cairo. And actually, in conversations with her, we discussed how there really wasn't enough research on Islam in South Asia. And certainly it's not something that was really focused on at Georgetown at that time. And so she really, as we've talked about, the power of the primary source was so important to her, and accessing documents in their original languages. And so she recommended that I study Urdu. And again, that was something I'd never thought about or considered. And so I Googled Urdu language fellowship. And there was an application due in 2 days. I got in, and I spent 2 years in India studying Urdu after my undergraduate degree. And then I pursued a PhD at Harvard in the study of Islam in South Asia. And now I teach at Princeton. And I'm constantly thinking about her example when I think about my research, when I think about my teaching, of how to open doors, how to make academia accessible. And you know, I was sharing with some other people that a large percentage of my friends from college pursued PhDs, which is not normal. I'd say maybe 75 or 80% of the people I know ended up doing PhDs, and they were all students of Professor Sonbol. So that shows that she had that confidence. So many people have said that. She had that confidence in all of us. You know, I was reading a recommendation letter that she had written for me, and even now I was like blushing, hearing the positivity that she had about me, that even now it's hard for me to believe about my own research and my own capabilities. So as I said, she had an indelible impact on myself, my career, and my entire network.
So a lot of the work that I do is based on everything that I've learned from Professor Sonbol and her books and her theoretical frameworks. And actually, the day that I found out she passed away, I was rereading her work and preparing to present it to Boston University the next day. I was actually presenting on family laws, and I found myself always questioning, where am I in these laws? Where is my mobility? Why do my rights always exist in the family structure? This was a sense of realization that I've had very late in life, but I've had it with Professor Sonbol. And it came about when I started to actually engage with her in my senior year mostly, where she stopped me in the middle of class, and I was an IPOL major, which was the most unfortunate decision I've made in my life. I apologize for IPOL majors here. But she stops me in the middle of class and she's like, Fatima, you're in the wrong major. And I was like, you think? I mean, it's the senior year, it's my last semester, I just did my thesis in IPOL, but I was in the wrong major. And that's when I learned exactly what I wanted to do from her, which was chase after stories. I chase after fragments of trauma right now. I look at silences. There's something so seductive about the archives that I've only learned from Professor Sonbol. And you can see it in like her email exchanges. I'd send her like, the thing is, we don't have very conventional email exchanges. Our entire message is the subject line. It would be like thinking of you, or be like, oh my God, check out this record. And it would be just an attachment of some sort. And that's what it was. Our idea of a gossip session would be going into her office and talking about how Deleuze would react to the news that has been taking place on Twitter or things like that. And that's the kind of gossip that she and I would engage in. It was a time where during COVID, she was the one person I spoke to on a regular basis. I called her almost every day. When I came over to your place, she was like, how did you not know where my house is? It's on Gamal Abdel Nasser Street. And I joked about how all paths lead to Abdel Nasser. So these are the memories and the impact that she has on my academic journey. I teach every summer. Every single time I teach what she has taught me about family laws. When my friends have gotten married, I was the person who reviewed their marriage contracts to ensure that they have conditions, and they still didn't believe me. I was like, Professor Sonbol would have told you to put conditions on in your marriage contract. And she was the person who told me to record stories from the margins. Record the stories and testimonies of violence and experiences of people who have been silenced and sidelined and pushed and told that they don't have a value in life. This was Professor Sonbol. This is her legacy. My academic life would not have come to where it is now if it wasn't for her, if it wasn't for the fact that she told me to name these women that I work with, to read and listen to these stories, to have them speak back to me. And another thing that she always says is that, this is the funniest part of my entire undergrad, and it was, I kept complaining about the IRB process, and she was like, this is why I interview dead people, and that's why the archive is so important to us. This is, I think, in my current academic life, my fulfillment in terms of where I'm at has come through her.
I think the most important thing that I learned from her in writing and teaching is freedom. Not only confidence, but the sense of freedom. Like every time I used to finish a chapter and bring it to her, she would give it back to me and say, where are you? I can't see you. Where is your voice? And my topic was a little bit controversial, so I was actually hiding my voice. And she didn't let me defend until she felt that it's my voice in the dissertation. Also in classes, I used to attend classes with her as her mentee and as a guest speaker when her class touches on Islamic topics. As Saud said in the first panel, the magic of her classes was that they felt completely free. Students were free to say anything, express themselves the way they wanted, and this is exactly what made her classes really magical.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left, but I know that a lot of her students are here with us, so I'd like to open up the floor briefly for you to share anything that you want to to share at this time? Anyone wants to share anything?
Thank you guys so much. I guess I'll go again, but this time I'll be more composed. Just like you said, Fatima, she managed to trust in us in such a way that just felt so natural, but that is tailor-made to your strengths. My journey took me out of academia, but she always made sure that I would come back, whether it's to just visit or chat or check on what I was doing. Even though she recommended me actually for the first job when they started their research fellowship program and TA program, she made sure that I would be given a chance at the interview process, etc. And that I actually got hired for a while, and the person next to me was a PhD. And I went to her and I told her, I barely just finished my bachelor's, I just graduated. And you know, my colleague is a PhD, and I don't think I have the capability to faithfully carry out the job. And I'll never forget what she said. She said, I supervised your CARS thesis. I know your caliber. Your caliber is at that level. You're just holding yourself back. And from then on, I realized, oh, okay, problem is me. So I need to work on myself. And I kept doing that faithfully with her. So even whenever, right now I work in the field of technology and stuff like that, and I would always come back to her and she would talk to me about what are the hegemonic structures in this technology you're working on? What is the process by which it was created and by which it's disseminated? What's the historical reference of where this started and where, things that no one would talk about in the field of where it is, right? But this is her influence, I feel. The way she teaches us is that we can take these lessons and apply them wherever we are in the world, not just in the field of academia. And I think this is really her treasure as a legacy, is that we will never take these lessons lightly. We'd come back, listen to the lectures, read the papers, do the work, and then apply it into the world so that it doesn't end up in a drawer. I remember one quote that she hated, which is, people write all of these amazing things, but they end up in a drawer somewhere collecting dust. Act on your writing, act on your theses, act on your knowledge. She really gave that phrase, you know, breathing life into knowledge. Yeah.
Related to lessons. So this has been the advice that I've been taking in the last year or so. When I was working with her as a TA, I sent her, there was a difficult time that I was experiencing, and I sent her an email, and I was like, here are my comments and all, and she said the following. Thank you for sending this, and then like a few comments about the work, and then really glad you're dealing with the painful issues you face. Always remember that there is always tomorrow and much to look forward to. Breathe when things get hardest. My mother always told me that you should take yourself into the cooler and then coolest as things get hotter and harder. It has worked for me over the long years. Try it and see. Simply breathe when mad. Breathe even harder when frustrated. And take yourself into a cool place until it all passes. I'm always here for you, Fatima.
We have one hand over there.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, we'll have it over here.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Good evening, everybody. I wasn't a student of Dr. Amira in the traditional sense, but I worked with her from the inception of the Qatar University's Department of International Affairs. So I think a few things were said about that program, but I want to mention one thing. I think she was very passionate about that program because she saw it as democratizing education in Qatar in certain ways, because she saw it as a way of offering a very good liberal education to particularly Qatari females. Not only just Qatari, but female students in Qatar who had certain limitation in terms of where they can go to get their education. As I think many of you will know, Qatar University runs in a sort of segregated co-education faculty, model. So she was really always thinking about how to engage, as a few of the original sort of panel said, how to engage the society that she was in. I will always remember her for her generosity of spirit, as well as her kindness. Thank you.
Yeah, so, okay, we'll take that last one and then we'll end with that. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Noor Saad al-Kbaisi. I used to be a student of Professor Sonbol. I don't want to get emotional, but if I do, I'll stop talking. I was in her class after I had my son. I was a brand new mom and freshly divorced. So it was a very difficult time. I was 21 years old. I felt that my life had begun and ended at that time. So it was a difficult experience. She told me, because I went to her and I told her I felt that I had no future. I wanted to do my, excuse me. I wanted to do my master's. I wanted to do a PhD. I wanted to be an academic because I saw her. I saw that she was an amazing professor and mentor. And so I went to her and I said, I feel that my life has really ended now, that I have a child and I got through a divorce. So she said, no, your life is what you make it to be. So if you want to pursue what you want, you can do that and you don't have to give up. So I applied for my master's at the University of Oxford and I asked her for a letter of recommendation and I got in and I went, having a 5-year-old at the time. My son was 5. And then during one of her classes, I wrote a short paper which looked at family law because I was going through difficulties myself through the court system here in Qatar. And so I did my course thesis on family law here in Qatar. I looked at it in depth and Professor Sonbol helped me a lot with that paper. And I was reviewed by her and Kambrava, and I did that presentation. I was very, very nervous. I remember thinking that my paper was very poorly written, but after I was done, I was frightened, just like you were. And so after I left, I went to her office and I said, oh, there was a lot of feedback and my paper was very badly written. But she said, no, actually your paper was dissected because it was so well written, so it was so well done. You can put in a lot more work and it will be way, way better. And then she told me, you can turn this into a book. Yeah. I've never turned it into a book, I must admit. I was too scared to take that step. But every time I saw Professor Sonbol, she would ask me, what did you do with that paper? And she was very persistent, insistent, and she would make you really believe in yourself. So I believe that not just us who have been previously her students, but even future students, I know they're not here, but maybe people can tell them, is that you really need to believe in yourself, and that's what Sonbol continued to tell, not just me, but everyone. Yeah. And being at a very young and ripe age, having gone through something that people usually go through later in life, I really felt that I needed that kind of support. And she was not my mother, she was not my relative, she was not, someone that was part of my life, but she became that. She, like everyone has said in all the videos, what everyone has said is that she really became a mother figure to us. And I'm very, I believe that we're very fortunate to have had her part of our lives, Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say a very big thank you to all the students who joined us. Yeah, Abla, you can clearly see that your mom was truly loved, and you have siblings. It's not just, yeah, you have a lot of siblings here. Thank you everybody for joining us. I'd like to invite Professor Akinade for the eulogy.
Good evening. I stand before you tonight to pay a well-deserved tribute to an outstanding colleague and friend. This is indeed a fitting benediction to the life, scholarship, and service of our departed colleague and friend, Amira Sonbol. Our deepest condolences to the family. You are in our thoughts and prayers. I stand before you in full and humble submission to the will of God, the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, and everything in between the two. The terrible news concerning the death of Amira Sonbol was a rude shock. It came to us louder than drums beating in the mind, to borrow some words from James Baldwin. The passing of a dear colleague naturally evokes sadness and a sense of loss. Our mortal life dissolves like snow. The name Adam is synonymous to dust. The passing years are just like dust. The fragility of life beckons with great power, and it wakes us from our slumber. The strong hands of death shatter the illusion of permanence. None of us can determine the frequency of death and predict the timing of its occurrence. You and I are slaves to the monster. However, the teachings concerning eschatological hope are glorious, and they are fully embedded in both Islam and Christianity. The joy that lies in eschatological eruptions in both Islam and Christianity provides unequivocal promise and stupendous hope after death. Yes, there is hope after death. As people of faith, we are indeed prisoners of hope. This hope is fully grounded in God's abiding love, promise, and mercy. I want to remind you at this time of deep reflection and sober remembrance that God's mighty transcendence saturates our space and soul with resounding mercy and grace. Plotinus remarked that the soul that beholds beauty becomes beautiful. Amira blessed us with her beautiful soul and generous spirit. We learn from her that kindness is not just an act, it is a reflection of our soul. For her, kindness was not a form of superficial affirmation to build positive karma or a form of cheap political correctness. Rather, it was an essential part of our DNA. Within our space and beyond, she displayed God's love and compassion. In a world that is often plagued by compassion fatigue, Amira's love for all and sundry was infinite and comprehensive. Our vocation was deeply influenced by the practice and praxis of Ubuntu. This African word means solidarity and togetherness. Ubuntu engenders authentic feelings of solidarity, empowerment, and empathy. It resonates with the Christian concept of Imago Dei, which means that everyone is created in the image of God. This principle endows every human being with precious dignity. It is an affirmation of the dignity of everyone, irrespective of race, gender, or class. This theological principle is very powerful. Its liberative imagination is truly amazing. May Almighty God grant you eternal rest, our precious and fearless princess. Take your well-deserved rest in the presence of the Almighty, the ultimate reality. We love you and we miss you. Go gently, or go gentle into that good night. Rest well and rest in peace. Our wonderful colleague, confidant, and comrade. Good night, Amira. Dream in peace with the ancients and the angels. Indeed, it is well with your soul. Amen. Amen.